Good afternoon, everybody. I am Rebecca McLaughlin-Eastham, and I'm delighted to be your moderator for this ADIPEC Decarbonisation in Energy webinar, brought to you by Energy Connects. It's taking place ahead of ADIPEC 2024, being held in Abu Dhabi again from the 4th until the 7th of November. As global momentum continues to build, the 1.5 degrees Celsius of the Paris Agreement continues to be a key focus, as is the pursuit of net zero. The energy industry is confronted with a challenge that will define the future, balancing the need for equitable global economic development and prosperity with the imperative of cutting global emissions. To keep this goal within sight, there is an urgent need to spark disruptive thinking and deliver high-impact solutions for a sustainable future, both bridging the gap between finance and innovation and unlocking new investments in a low-carbon ecosystem. There is no one solution that can bridge that gap, for as we know, multiple low-carbon technologies will be needed at scale to achieve the net zero pathway and complement efforts such as renewables. The historic UAE consensus adopted at COP28 provided a much-needed momentum for industry and governments to accelerate decarbonisation. And indeed, as we look ahead to November's COP29, the way forward in scaling up decarbonisation requires an equally comprehensive global approach. Yet another key date for your diary in November is, of course, ADIPEC 2024. So without further ado, let's get straight into this webinar, which is focusing on decarbonisation and the journey ahead, indeed our collective pursuit of a clean energy transition. Let me introduce my esteemed guests to you. First up, we have Dr. Klaus Brunn. He is the Global Director of Research and Development at Ebara Elliott Group Energy, and he is joining us from Pittsburgh, where it's 6:33 in the morning. Hello, Klaus, how are you?
I'm doing very well, and thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
Lovely to see you. Next up, we have Kurt Graham, the Vice President of the Office of Technologies for Fluor Corporation, and he joins us from Southern California, where it's even earlier, 3:30 in the morning, I believe. Kurt, how are you?
I'm doing well. Nice to be here.
Great to see you. Mohammed is joining me in Dubai. Hello, Mohammed. Mohammed Rustam is the Head of Sustainable Solutions for the MENA region at Honeywell STS, Sustainable Technology Solutions. You're very welcome, Mohammed.
Thank you.
And we're also heading over to Malaysia, where we're joined by Wira Abadi Shakawi, and he is the General Manager for Physical Decarbonisation at PETRONAS. 6:40 in the evening, I believe, where you are, Wira.
Yes, it is. Great to be here, Rebecca.
Lovely to see you all. Gentlemen, let's set the scene. Let's do a quick round robin. If you can refamiliarize our audience with a little bit about yourselves, your role and your remit, your current focus. Wira, let me come to you in Malaysia first, please.
Hi there, my name is Wira. I'm with PETRONAS Upstream Business, and I'm looking at the physical decarbonization of our assets here in PETRONAS globally.
Thank you very much. Mohammed, let me come to you for Honeywell in Dubai.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon. So I cover the businesses that are related to the sustainable technology solutions under Honeywell. I cover the MENA region, and this includes decarbonization through carbon capture, energy storage, renewable fuels, and plastic circularity. Thank you for having me again.
Thank you. Kurt, over to you.
I lead Fluor's Office of Technology. I'm responsible for the processes that Fluor licenses out to the industry. I also provide strategy guidance to Fluor globally and to all of our business groups on process technology and energy transition in particular. And all of Fluor's technical experts have dotted line reporting to me, so I can get the right expertise to the right project, regardless of where it sits in the world. And nice to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Klaus.
I'm the Global Director of Research and Development, which really means product development for Ebara Elliott Energy Company. Ebara Elliott Energy Company is a large manufacturer of machinery, compressors, steam turbines, pumps, et cetera, that kind of stuff. And my organization is really in charge of all product development with a big focus of on the energy industry, obviously, and also in the decarbonization market as it is coming along.
Thank you. Gentlemen, let's jump straight to our first question. And I should say to all of those watching, listening around the world, a very warm welcome too. We would love to have your input and your feedback. If you'd like to send questions, just follow the prompts on screen and we'll do our best to get them to the panelists. So the first question, as you can see on your display, is what are the new pathways and opportunities to scale and grow businesses in a fast evolving and low carbon energy landscape? Klaus, let me come to you for your thoughts on this first, please.
Well, it is clearly a very, very changing marketplace right now, right? And we look at it from a manufacturer's perspective. And so there's massive amount of opportunities that are coming up currently in the industry. Everything is changing from fossil to non-fossil. Decarbonization is the topic. And decarbonization is really hydrogen. It is alternative, what we used to call alternative energy, wind, solar, hydro, tidal and all that waste stuff and all these different things. All of those now need to be firmed up with energy storage, which is also a turbo machinery market for us. The biggest thing though, and that's often not talked about, is the decarbonization really means decarbonization of fossil fuel, right? Decarbonization means getting rid of CO2. And so the short term, the largest opportunities that we see is really not related to these alternative energies, but is more related to the decarbonization of existing fossil infrastructure. About 80% of the primary energy of the world is still fossil, right? And so if you have any climate targets for 2050 whatsoever, to keep those in mind and to be able to meet those, you really have to decarbonize the existing energy infrastructure. So you're looking at the fossil fuel decarbonization being post pre-combustion separation of CO2. You have to take that CO2, transport it through a pipeline and stick it in the ground somewhere. And all of that requires machinery, requires infrastructure, and that infrastructure needs to be built. So that's where we see in the short term the big opportunities. In the midterm, we see the energy storage market to firm up the really solar and wind. And then in the long term, we see hydrogen. Those are the big opportunities over the next 15, 20 years. And so we as a business, we have to follow our customers. And so we're adopting to that energy market. And we're not transitioning away from fossil. Obviously, we have to meet our customers' demands. But we also are starting to develop new products for these markets.
Good to hear. Developing new products, energy storage and hydrogen, obviously a key focus. Kurt, let me throw it over to you. New pathways and opportunities.
Right, and I think in addition to the pathways that Klaus has already discussed, we're also seeing niche markets in renewable diesel and sustainable aviation fuel. We do expect that, particularly in aviation fuel, that there will be growth there because it's very hard to decarbonize jet aircraft. We're also seeing a lot of industrial facilities really looking at opportunities to electrify, to reduce their own firing. But I think all of these are kind of driven by the specific regulations, subsidies, and taxes in the locale of that specific facility. So we're seeing a diverse mix of carbon capture, electrification, new fuels, depending on the specific regimes in those locations.
Thank you very much. Mohammed, tell me your thoughts.
So we in Honeywell have seen, we've gone through the digitization or digital talk a few years back, and then we went into COVID and saw the transition and discussions around energy decarbonization. And the way we see the world is in three mega trends. We see digitization will continue to drive, optimization, energy efficiency. Things that are already done by industry, but things that can be improved further with AI, with further focus on carbon as a KPI to address. With the energy transition, there has been a discussion about, a lot already about hydrogen, renewable sources of power, solar, wind. And how do you match these new resources of energy with the existing infrastructure, integrate them and improve on them? So that's another space where industry is coming together around to try to solve these problems as they evolve and we learn more about them. But then again, also Kurt mentioned, sustainable aviation fuel, and that's another mega trend that we're seeing, which is, aviation is going to grow. So the future of aviation, either in continuing to use existing assets, airplanes, airports, to fly people around, and flight and interconnectedness of the world is going to continue to grow. Sustainable aviation fuel is one step to continue using the existing infrastructure, but we're also looking at electrification and hybrid aviation for the future.
Thank you very much. So much ground to cover. Wira, talk to me about what you see as new pathways and opportunities to scale and grow at this time.
Thank you for the question, Rebecca. Well, pathways and opportunities, scale and growth. I mean, what does this all infer and mean? I mean, amidst a global call to decarbonize and meet evolving customer preferences for cleaner energy solutions, we in PETRONAS have announced our energy transition strategy that focuses on, firstly, our core business to provide more energy with less emission, secondly, new business to capture new growth opportunities, and thirdly, a credible net zero carbon emissions pathway. I would say that for just PETRONAS Upstream, this strategy is very apt and revolutionizing our agility as we focus on reducing our emissions from existing operations globally, while looking to create new value opportunities towards ultimately achieving an upstream operations that is net zero. This energy strategy that we have is what anchors our outlook in dissecting and staying ahead of the curve in the low carbon energy landscape. Now, having said that, our strategy here in PETRONAS is anchored by our own net zero carbon emissions 2050 pathway, with 4 main levers centering on zero routine flaring, energy efficiency, electrification, as well as CCS. Now, these levers are something which are very new and some of them very familiar. For instance, zero routine flaring is where PETRONAS Upstream looks to create new opportunities from the emissions leakages reduction. And our key milestone has been the achievement of our zero routine venting by 2024 for all PETRONAS Malaysia assets. I would say this bodes well as we embark on various efforts such as flare gas recovery and operational optimizations towards ZRF by 2030. Whereas on the energy efficiency and electrification front, I would say this is somewhat symbiotic in how we approach it, as these are levers that we see as catalyzing a pathway where scaling up efforts is crucial. Strategizing energy demand optimization and partial electrification at upstream assets is our current focus, as we see them as key to a low carbon future. Now, for CCS, this is a frontier that is a major focus as it is becoming increasingly important to help reduce emissions from the hard to abate sources in industries. And looking at the demand, it is such a promising avenue for business growth, where PETRONAS is on course to establish 3 CCS hubs in Malaysia as a solution to decarbonize our operations as well. So ultimately, the shift towards a low carbon energy landscape presents a wealth of opportunities for businesses willing to innovate and adapt, and keeping agile and embracing our new technologies, exploring new business models, and fostering strategic partnerships. Companies can not only scale effectively, but also play a pivotal role in shaping a sustainable future. Back to you, Rebecca.
Thank you very much. Very comprehensive. Much food for thought. Just want to come to a quick question that we're getting from one of our viewers. Thank you very much. Do continue to send them in. I can see them starting to flow. Mohammed, let me throw this one to you. Our audience member says it's one thing to reduce emissions at production sites. However, emissions downstream, how is that being achieved? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it was it Klaus or Kurt that mentioned, all this energy decarbonization primarily is the decarbonization of fossil fuel, right? Millions of years of organic material converting underground into hydrocarbons. This is what really took, the CO2 content in the air into the ground. And by burning it over the past 100 years, we're bringing it out. So the whole theory behind decarbonizing fossil fuel is really stripping the energy out of the fossil fuel molecule, taking the CO2 and putting it in the ground. So by virtue of discussions around carbon capture, that's what we are doing. We're taking the energy out of the molecule while keeping the carbon content or carbon molecule and sequestering it, hopefully permanently under the ground. And in doing so, we are decarbonizing downstream. So that's one pathway, which is carbon capture. The other pathways, which are the when I was talking about the future of the aviation, we're talking about sustainable aviation fuel, which can come from biosources, or sustainable aviation fuel, which is synthesized using green hydrogen molecules and CO2 that has been captured to produce a molecule that's recycling the CO2 rather than sequestering it. And in both these spaces, we think there's tremendous opportunity for growth. We're hearing a lot of emphasis on blue ammonia in the region. Projects are coming up, and green ammonia also as well. And that's nothing other than taking, either a fossil fuel molecule, stripping the CO2 out and converting it into a transportable fuel, in the case of blue ammonia, or green ammonia, taking renewable energy, converting it into a transportable fuel as well.
Thank you very much. Kurt, just a very quick comment on the downstream side, and then we'll move to our next question, please.
Sure. I think also we are seeing, plastics recycling technologies start to come into the market. Those provide opportunities to reduce downstream emissions. And we're also starting to see some green chemicals projects, not just ammonia, but also in the ethylene market. I think, Dow has Path to Zero out there. So there are opportunities for reducing, Scope 3 emissions.
Thank you.
When decarbonizing fossil fuels, there are really three pathways, right? There is the pathway of making hydrogen from fossil fuels right at the source somewhere and transporting that hydrogen either as hydrogen or as some hydrogen carrier such as ammonia, ethanol, methanol, dimethyl ether, and all these other things that you can carry. Or you transport your fossil fuels as you have in the past, and then you decarbonize really at the place where you would normally utilize them in the power plant, for example, pre or post combustion conversion, and then you have to deal with the CO2. Either way, you have to deal with the CO2, right? And so that's kind of sort of the big challenge. What do you do with that? And obviously, if you create that CO2 at a distributed site downstream, then it becomes logistically more challenging to put it into the ground because you're going to have a lot of pipelines and a lot of collection points where that CO2 goes. Whereas if you separate that CO2 out at the production side of your carbon, then it makes it logistically easier. But on the other hand, then you have to deal with the problem of transporting hydrogen, which in itself is very, very challenging, either as hydrogen or as a liquid, as you mentioned.
We're going to come on to some of the innovations, and not least technological ones, which are really helping solve some of those critical problems. But let's move for now to question number 2. And Kurt, I'll stay with you and get your thoughts. Sorry, Klaus, if you can tell me, what's your opinion on how will forging public-private partnerships really help to transform the energy system of the future? Critical role we know it will play, but how so? How has the conversation moved on from when we were talking about it at last year's ADIPEC, for example?
Well, I'm not sure that it's progressed as much as we had hoped. We're still looking for substantial rollout of capital projects that are going to be required to meet targets. And I think that's still, a goal for industry and the world to achieve. I mean, the price of carbon really drives these markets from an economics point of view. So pricing of carbon by governments throughout the world is a critical aspect. Public-private partnership is driven potentially by that. And there's lots of different economic forms this can take. It depends on how those regulations come through, whether there's taxes, whether there's upfront capital grants by governments, or whether there's a subsidy like a tax credit, like we're seeing in the U.S. with 45Q on carbon capture. So there are lots of different evolving opportunities and different financial structures. But once again, there has to be a price for carbon, because without it, there's no real differential to drive movement away from fossil fuels, which from all we have seen, these new technologies, though fully technically viable and maybe within a striking range economically of traditional paths, without some kind of green premium, we probably still won't see massive uptake of these new technologies.
Thank you. Klaus, would you agree?
Yeah, no, it's obviously carbon in itself provides no added value, right? I mean, it's something that you have to provide money for to get rid of. And so it really becomes the question of the ratepayer or the taxpayer, right? So at the end of the day, it's a question of how much is the ratepayer and the taxpayer willing to pay. When we talk about these public-private partnerships, what we're really talking is about some kind of form of either taxation or subsidy, which is necessary usually in the infancies of most technologies, especially on this massive kind of scale that we're trying to redo the energy industry. In the long term, we have to get to a business model where these public-private partnerships kind of pay for themselves so that it doesn't burden the ratepayer or taxpayer excessively. Otherwise, people will get fed up and then it goes away, right? And that's not the answer we want either.
Absolutely. Let's turn our attention to technology. Wira, let me come back out to you in Malaysia. Our third question that we'd like to focus on is what might be some of the technologies of tomorrow? What will we be focusing on for the front lines of decarbonisation? What are exciting things on the horizon?
Thanks, Rebecca. Now, I think this is a very interesting question, as technologies of tomorrow can be quite a conundrum, because personally, I think tomorrow is the today I worry about yesterday. So having foresight into what lies ahead is quite, I would say, a crystal ball, which the world needs to always be on the lookout for. So specifically on this, I would say decarbonizing technology, leading change, advancement in CCS, energy efficiency improvement tools, electrification, advanced oil field technologies, and renewable energies. As CCS is one of PETRONAS's key NZC levers, this specific technology components leading to the entire CCS ecosystem is where the examination and flourishing needs to happen. Now that will allow high efficiency in emission reduction and can capture emissions from the hard to abate industries, such as cement, steel, and chemical production. Now, on the energy efficiency front, leveraging on digitalization and operational excellence, I would say plays a crucial role in reducing energy consumption and lowering costs, as well as minimizing environmental impact. For PETRONAS, where the advancements in technologies is exciting is the area of advanced oil field technologies that are required to help balance the need for continued oil and gas production with the imperative to minimize environmental impacts and operate more sustainably. And then there's always electrification, a topic that I would say every global citizen is considerably aware of, with EVs making a splash in the automotive world. So in the oil and gas industry, electrification technologies will play a major part in reducing pre-combustion emissions as it's a transformative approach in the journey towards a low-carbon energy. The other hot topic is renewable energy, which I would think would take another whole webinar to discuss, but it is definitely a frontier where PETRONAS is partaking in. So overall, I would say that to examine tomorrow, the pursuit of technologies needs foresight now to scale up and successfully implement them. Back to you, Rebecca.
Thank you very much. And we've had a question come in and you've addressed some of it, to be fair, but our audience member says there are so many paths to decarbonisation for energy, each with different costs and effectiveness. They're looking at CCUS in particular. Is it being considered by PETRONAS? And how important is it to demonstrate that CO2 is being safely and permanently stored? And that this path to decarbonisation will cost taxpayers and consumers less than the alternative solution. It's the age-old debate. It's what everybody wants to know. Transparency, cost efficiency, effectiveness, all of the above. Wira, what's your thoughts?
Well, I believe transparency is definitely the key to the success of any technology. In particular, CCS, as mentioned, is a major part of our PETRONAS NZC levers, being one of the four of them. And now PETRONAS has embarked on 3 CCS hubs within Malaysia. We're on the frontier of making sure that emission sequestration is successfully implemented, and that sequestration is a sustainable solution for industries beyond the oil and gas. So yeah, transparency is there. And definitely as we embark further into realization, I believe the success would be an important factor that ensures the continuation of the results.
Thank you. Mohammed, let's keep focus on innovation in tech, and not least picking up on what Weira was saying about digital technologies, of course, forecast to reduce global energy consumption by around 10%, CO2 emissions by around 15% by 2030. What are you excited about in terms of the technologies on the front lines of decarbonisation, tomorrow's tech?
So for us, I think a lot of the technologies that we have in Honeywell that have been, solving or put to solve the problems of decarbonization are really technologies that have been used for 20 to 50 years, right? We're repurposing these technologies for today's problems. And I think we need to be cognizant that step changes in an industry that's very interconnected is difficult. So we need to take incremental changes while we're doing step changes. So while we're talking about incremental changes, we're talking about energy efficiency through digitization, optimization, updating your existing assets to work with, so in the case of electrification, right? So these little steps get you closer and closer to that target. For us in Honeywell, when we're talking about decarbonization, the industry, for example, when we're talking about blue hydrogen, blue ammonia, conventionally would have probably gone with amine solutions to do decarbonization. On a major project that we have in the US, we sat together with the end user, tried to figure out what kind of problems they're trying to solve. And with that, we came up with technologies that are related to cryogenic on the basis of, age-old, 50-year-old pressure swing absorption technology. So the combination of these technologies enabled our customer to have the product streams at the right carbon intensities to meet the challenges that they're looking at. So innovation does not necessarily mean new technology. It means applying technology in a new fashion. So that's one area where we're seeing a lot of success. And it ties back down also to a lot of discussion that was had about incentives, clarity of incentives. As the needle was moving for our customers, so was how we're crafting the solution. Solutions of the future, I think when we talk about sustainable aviation fuel again, that's a technology that we've had for over, I want to say 12 years now. We were part of the ASTM accreditation for certifying, HEFA as a route. Now we're working on methanol to jet as a route. And that's, again, technology of the future because, the regulation will kick in the future. The cost parity maybe for hydrogen to green hydrogen to blue hydrogen will come in the future, and the demand will come in the future. So we're working on methanol to jet, and we're already successful with a project in China for revamping an existing asset. These are very capital intensive assets, existing asset for renewable fuels. And when I look into the real future forward, I see renewable energy integration into grids. And that's when you have to start looking at new forms of energy storage, be it hydrogen or be it long duration energy storage. And that's a space that Honeywell is really, really focused on to develop battery storage that is 12 plus hours duration and can function in multiple geographic areas, so hot, cold environments.
Superb. Thank you very much, Mohammed. Kurt, it's inspiring stuff, but as Mohammed was saying, innovation is not necessarily in the form of new technology. It's reimagining how we use it, repurposing. Solutions come from there. What are your thoughts on the technologies of tomorrow?
Yeah, I think if we look at existing facilities and assets, those were all designed and optimized around energy prices that didn't include a cost of carbon. So those designs, although optimal at the time they were originally designed and constructed, if you look at them through a lens of cost of carbon, you probably would have come to a very different decision that probably pushed energy efficiency much more strongly. We are seeing clients go into their existing facilities and look at energy efficiency retrofits, both to reduce the cost of fuel and energy, but also to address and take credit for reducing carbon capture. I also think we're really starting to see other manufacturing entities, energy, clients who use energy outside of traditional, refineries and chemical plants, who are also starting to embrace sustainability and are really looking at, hey, we vent a lot of heat. Is there a way to reuse that? Is there a way to look at our systems and make them more efficient? So I think both in terms of existing assets and as we look towards new assets, it's not just about new technology. It's also about, we've moved the needle on where energy, the trade-off between energy efficiency and capital cost goes. And I think we are going to see pretty much every client look for some value to carbon and an increase in energy efficiency in their facilities.
Klaus, talk to me from the standpoint of energy efficiency. Do you agree with what Kurt said?
I mildly disagree with Mohammed here in that, yes, we are utilizing existing technologies clearly, making hydrogen, transporting hydrogen, compressing hydrogen has been around, same with carbon dioxide, same with energy storage, that's all been around. But what we're still lacking is process optimization. If you look at round trip efficiencies for energy storage, long-term energy storage, you're looking at 50, 60%, compressed air energy storage, thermal energy storage. These are not ideal. These are very, very far from ideal. Same with hydrogen transport. Yes, we know how to deal with it, but it's very costly. There are leakage issues. Efficiency is miserable. Capital equipment is very, very expensive. And so there is significant technology challenges out there that still need to be addressed. Most of those, I agree with him, are not revolutionary. They're evolutionary in nature. There need to be efficiency improvement in machinery, in equipment, in combustion technology, and all of those areas of machinery that have been around, but they're clearly far away from the optimal design points with these new process fluids and with these new technologies. So yes, I agree that this is existing technology, but it is not new technology once you put it into a process. And that also brings up the entire issue about how do you finance these projects? Because basically, from a financial or banking perspective, a lot of these technologies look like new technologies to banks, right? And they haven't been demonstrated. They've been maybe demonstrated at a university lab. They've been demonstrated in a very small pilot scale. But then when you're talking about mega hydrogen, mega carbon sequestration, mega energy, hundreds of megawatts of energy storage using, for example, pumped hydro, well, not pumped hydro, but pumped thermal, those technologies are not mature yet. And they need to be demonstrated. And that's one area tying back to the public-private partnerships. That's where the public-private partnerships really bring value, when you can utilize public money to demonstrate a technology to make it bankable, right? Rather than just saying, okay, this technology is mature, give me money. Well, most banks won't give you money because they say, we don't know if it works. Now you can go with the public money and try to demonstrate a technology, take it from the bench scale to pilot scale to full scale, and then suddenly a technology becomes bankable. So there is still quite a bit of technology development that's needed and demonstration of that technology development before we can really say this is mature.
Okay. Let me throw a quick question from the audience to you. Thank you for them. Keep them coming in. Just send them on the chat box, if you will. The person asks, considering digitalization and AI as an enabler for improving energy efficiency and reduction of associated emissions, are you satisfied with what is currently available in the market? What improvements and advancements would you like to see for the future? Klaus, a quick comeback. What are your thoughts?
I mean, digital and AI are support technologies, right? So they help you in making things more efficient to optimize processes. AI is still kind of sort of on the outskirts, trying to see where we can actually fit it in, right? I mean, digitalization has been around, big data has been around for lots of time, and the question about deterministic against probabilistic and all that kind of stuff is something that's been talked about for the last 30 years. So AI is still trying to find its place from both a manufacturing and operational perspective right now. When it comes to digitalization, that's being implemented, right? I mean, that's been implemented now for 30 years. We have digital twins now for all of our machinery. We have technology that helps you operate your machinery better. But these are incremental gains, right? What a digital twin, for example, does, it tells you, okay, my machine is not operating at its best efficiency point. I can get another 2%. That's great, because now I know how to do something about it. The same thing with reliability and operability of machinery. Digital twins allow you to operate your machines more reliably. But these are incremental gains. They're not the revolutionary changes. And as far as AI is concerned, I mean, obviously everybody's pursuing AI technology right now, but it's still trying to find its place, especially in the decarbonization area.
Thank you very much. I'm going to come to you, Kurt, in a second, but Mohammed first. Jump in. Tell me what you think about digitalization and AI. Are you satisfied with what you see in the market? What needs to be done to make the boat go faster?
I agree with Klaus, just to make a point. But I think, again, it's similar to what we've been talking about on hardware. Software is similar. Incremental changes, yes. But I think the change now that we're seeing with AI is you can manage a lot more information simultaneously. So what that means is you can not only look at the single asset, but you can look now at the portfolio of assets and the interconnectedness between assets and what process affects what process, what pricing in the future, predictive. We're talking about predictive maintenance, but also there's talk about predictive pricing. Right? So how all that comes together makes projects not only energy efficient, but also economically efficient, to the point that you can squeeze an extra few dollars out of it rather than a few or few less CO2 molecules. So together, when you look at assets in that way and your portfolio in connection with not only the physical asset, but the physical asset as it means to your business, then there are a lot of opportunities to avoid waste, both in energy, but also in terms of economics. And the other thing that I would say is AI and technology today is also enabling us to do things that in the past we would push the limit, but only so close to the limit. Now we're pushing it closer because the information that we get, we can aggregate and give operators, business leaders, actionable insights that they can work with and make decisions faster and more impactful. So back to you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mohammed. Kurt, talk to me about AI, the advancements that we currently have, what you'd like to see.
Well, I think we're seeing a lot of opportunities for AI, but they're not just in areas of energy reduction or carbon reduction. And I think something we need to be very aware of, if you look at AI projections on power demand, it's the fastest growing power demand in the world right now by category. So I actually think that AI is going to cost us more CO2 than it's going to save us because it's ubiquitous use throughout all of society. Going to drive enormous energy demand. So we need to be careful a little bit about looking at things globally instead of just what a specific benefit could be. Back to you.
Thank you. Mohammed, you're shaking your head. Do you want to jump in?
I agree, but I think ultimately, look, when we look at so we've been talking to we have these discussions about how much energy goes into computation and all that. But again, the integration of heat from these sources, what can you do else with? So there's more integration that will come. And I think the whole market will aggregate in new ways that we've not thought of today. And that's the challenge. When you have a lot of, we've talked about regulations and technologies and investment and finance, but ultimately what's happening is the whole world, and I think Kurt mentioned that, the whole world is restructuring itself to a new KPI, which is CO2, a new KPI, which is energy efficiency, and new KPI, which is I need more information faster, right? And I want to travel more. And all these are new KPIs that the whole world is trying to align behind. And the more we have clarity, at least from governments, from industry on specifications, requirements, taxation, all that. The more we have clarity, the more we have surety of these taxes will come through, and the more we have harmonization between countries and governments and on these requirements, the faster I think industry can solve the problem. Sorry,
Klaus,
went into a tangent, but I think, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I totally agree with Kurt that, you know, the massive amount of energy that's required for data centers and for AI, and that's a massively growing energy demand sector, creating a lot of CO2 emissions, which is kind of funny. But on the other hand, you can also look at it, you know, 40, 50 years ago, if you wanted to answer a question, you needed to jump in a car and drive to a library and get an answer there. And that's also CO2. And so nobody's really gone through the effort of making a direct comparison. You know, if you do Google search now and you get an answer very quickly to a very complex question versus 40, 50 years ago, you needed to spend weeks in trying to get an answer to that same question. How much energy did that cost? So I agree with what you're saying in that AI and data centers have massive amounts of energy demands, but they also provide a significant value that indirectly save you energy. I just kind of wanted to intercede with that, sorry.
That's what we want, a dynamic debate. Always good to hear your thoughts. We're going to move swiftly to question four, and thank you very much for sending your questions. They're coming in thick and fast now, but question 4 focuses on the bottom line, not least. Will the latest innovative ideas, trends, and market dynamics drive efficiency? This we've covered to some degree, and profitability in decarbonisation. Talk to me about the bottom line. Wira, over to you.
Oh, absolutely, Rebecca. I mean, the latest innovative ideas, trends, and market dynamics are definitely poised to significantly drive both efficiency and profitability in decarbonization efforts. Now, looking at innovative ideas within the perspective of PETRONAS, we've recently entered a memorandum of understanding with partners to look into a technology which is on zero emissions power generation system. Now, in essence, this aims to generate blue electrons while unlocking our stranded high CO2 gas fuels. So yes, this is a case study in an innovative idea that looks into market dynamics of the energy landscape while enhancing the efficiency of decarbonization processes. Now, speaking of market dynamics, it is increasingly favoring sustainable and low carbon solutions. As we see various regulatory frameworks tighten and consumer preferences shift towards green options, companies that lead in decarbonization are likely to enjoy competitive advantages. This growing demand for sustainable practices often translates into better market positioning and increased profitability for early adopters. I would personally profess a belief that collaborative efforts among industry players, research institutions, and governments are crucial in driving breakthroughs in decarbonization. And partnerships can lead to shared resources, to reduced costs, and accelerated innovation. And by working together, stakeholders definitely can address complex challenges more effectively and achieve greater efficiencies. So all in all, the convergence of cutting-edge technologies, digitalization, evolving market dynamics, increased investment, and collaborative efforts is indeed setting the stage for greater efficiency and profitability in decarbonization. As we see these trends continue to evolve, they will play a crucial role in transforming the decarbonization landscape and creating the sustainable value for businesses and society alike. Back to you, Rebecca.
Thank you very much, Wira. Let me come to you, Mohammed. As Wira just said, the convergence of not only partnership, collaboration, market dynamics, new innovations, this is all looking positive for not only efficiencies, but also profitability, right?
Yeah, sure. Look, whenever there's change, industry needs to respond to change. The time gap between the demand for the change and the response to the change, whoever gets into that market earlier reaps the benefit of that bigger profit, but also takes in more risk, right? So it's always a dynamic that, the industry, the operators need to take into account. We've discussed public-private partnerships. We've discussed, incentives that kick in, right? But ultimately, it's all about clarity of these regulations so that industry can, target and go after these problems in a meaningful way. And, efficiency optimization to a bank, all that is numbers. Show me how you're going to be bankable, right? We talk about green funding and all that, but we've seen at the end of the day, it's like any other business. Show me how you're making money. How are you going to be bankable? Are you using a technology that is de-risked? Do you have the infrastructure around you to get your solution or your product from point A to point B? Do you have an off-taker that is signing off for a period of time that is long enough for me to de-risk my investment in you? So ultimately, it's all about de-risking the whole from feedstock to product to off-taker, and being able to do that for a longer period of time with regulation that is strong and stands behind those off-takes or enables those off-takes for longer. And that's where banks are able to finance, give you a better rate, and that's where you as an investor, operator, developer are able to make more profits earlier because you're taking the right risks and addressing the risks at every stage in the process.
Well, you must have read my mind, because to mention the banks and finance, it segues beautifully into our next question, to which you've given something of a brilliant answer. But let me come to you, Klaus, to follow up on question number 5, which is how we can really unlock valuable finance and foster greater collaborations. How can finance help deploy low carbon energy solutions?
So, I mean, there's really multiple areas, and we have to be a little more granular here in answering this. I mean, there's the area of, what we traditionally called alternative energy, wind, solar, hydro, and all that kind of stuff. And that's very bankable right now. Those are existing technologies. When they got started, especially in solar and wind 40, 50 years ago, they were not. But we've had enough public-private partnerships, subsidies, funding, government funding to demonstrate these technologies. And they're very commercially attractive right now at this point. The same with electrification. Electricity prices haven't risen in most places in the world to the point where electrification isn't actually viable. And so converting, let's say, a gas turbine or a steam turbine or a diesel engine to an electric motor in an industrial or process application very often is commercially attractive. And there's certainly no technical risk associated with that in most cases. Now, when it comes to the areas of energy storage and carbon capture and sequestration, those are still areas where you have to be a lot more creative to demonstrate that you can make money, right? Because there is no direct added value in either one of them. On the energy storage, you could look at it as, I'm going to sell electricity into the market. And so there are some relatively straightforward business models. When it comes to decarbonization, CCS and CCUS, it's a lot more harder because really you're not transporting and sequestering a product that has any direct monetary value. So that will probably for a long time rely on some kind of subsidies, on some kind of taxpayer incentives to fund these projects. And I mean, that's kind of where society has to decide, is there value in doing this? And I think society has decided that there is value in doing this, and we're willing to pay for these technologies. When it comes to bankability is, can I make money as a bank? Right? I mean, I'm going to give you money and I want my money back plus some. The biggest risk on that is not really what percentage of money do I get back as far as interest is concerned, but does it utterly fail, either from a technical perspective or commercial perspective? And so what banks want to know is, does the technology work, and does it work for a long term? And that's, again, where the public funding can very much help, when you can demonstrate technologies that are not being proven on a commercial scale. It's one thing to build a small thermal energy storage facility and show that it works nicely, and convert that into 100 megawatts or 200 megawatt facility that has not been proven. No bank will throw money at that. But if you get a government loan guarantee for that, then the bank will certainly jump in and say, yeah, I'll do that. If the government guarantees that I'm going to get my money back, that helps quite a bit. And in most of those cases, those loan guarantees really don't cost the government a lot of money, because most of the time they actually get their money back. So loan guarantees, subsidies, tax incentives can help quite a bit in that kind of business to make projects bankable.
Thank you very much. Kurt, let me come to you for your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I mean, where we see carbon capture really being implemented or projects moving towards implementation are those places where there are subsidy or taxes that are significant. So, in the United States, 45Q providing $85 a ton, 12 years of tax credit. We are seeing projects move through feeds and getting ready to FID. We were seeing significant progress in Canada, where their tax regime was, well above $120 Canadian per ton. But as there has been uncertainty in, how long that government will stay in power and whether there will be significant backtreading, we've seen projects slow down and not FID, but kind of hold that feed. In Europe, certainly in the UK, we've seen significant movement on major carbon capture projects and also in Europe. So I think all of these things are driving, but I will comment that if we look at this, what I'm saying is fairly large interest in carbon capture, we're still talking about 10 or 20 projects. If we're going to achieve the kind of carbon reductions that are called out for 2030 or 2050, where we're basically at net zero, we need thousands of projects. I mean, there are literally just in the US, thousands of power plants. So we have not reached the scale of projects, and these projects take between 3 and 5 years minimum. I mean, these are large, billion-dollar capital projects. So we still need to see a significant injection of capital into the markets to make major reductions in carbon. And I think we have not yet seen that, and I don't think that the market dynamics today favor that kind of injection of massive capital. And probably it will require government interventions.
Interesting. One to watch. Thank you very much. More questions from the audience. Thank you for sending them in. We will do our very best to get through as many as possible, but the clock is against us, so bear with us. There's a question here about the short-term opportunities that we've been discussing. Where does the panel see CCS being developed first? What regions have sufficient policy and regulatory support today to start investing in carbon capture right at this present time? Kurt, let me stay with you to get your opinion on this. And Mohammed.
Yeah, I think, if you look, the U.S. has, Class 6 wells are now being permitted. States are starting to be able to get primacy. This is driving sequestration relatively rapidly. I mean, we saw, the state of Louisiana go to permitting for Class 6 wells in less than a year. Even at the federal level, EPA is pushing to get permits issued in less than 2 years. So I think in the United States, although the regulatory environment is still always challenging because of multiple authorities, we're seeing significant progress. In Canada, we've seen the government take a very strong position on getting permitting done, and also, major emitters ganging together to have single sequestration and pipeline. And I think in Europe, we're also seeing movement go forward on offshore sequestration. So I think a lot of the dynamics are there. We have been storing and injecting CO2. EOR has been done for decades. We have good practice with this. And on Class 2 disposal wells, we've been disposing hazardous materials underground for 80, 100 years. So there is good track record. There are occasional, failures of wells. But if you look at the volume of wells, we're talking about fractions of a percentage of failures. So I do think that all of the pieces are in place to make this happen if we're willing to spend the money and do the projects.
Mohammed, all the pieces are in place if we're willing to spend the money and do the projects.
Sure, with the right incentives. But what I'd like to add, it's not only where the incentives are, it's where the opportunity exists. So if you look at the Middle East, there's good sequestration locations. We have, natural gas volumes and costs that are could be an enabler for a very cost-effective decarbonized molecule to be exported. And I see the Middle East honestly being the center for where either blue molecules or green molecules get exported to the world, such as Korea, Japan, Europe. That's why the investments are happening in the UAE and Saudi Arabia, because they see this as an opportunity to take the next steps towards being the energy source for the world, from fossil to cleaner fossil to cleaner molecules. So eventually, it's not only where the regulations are, but where the opportunity creates or comes together to take benefit of these regulations.
Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you. Please, was that Klaus?
It's interesting because Kurt talked about funding and Mohammed about opportunities, but we also have to remember that you have to have a supply chain, right? And that supply chain is limited in that, and again, I look at it maybe from the world of a manufacturer of machinery. All manufacturers of the world that make turbo machinery can make maybe 600 or so large centrifugal compressors per year, right? And if you look at just the numbers, and you can take a macroeconomic perspective, like Kurt said, there is a couple thousand combined cycle plants, natural gas combined cycle plants in the United States alone that could benefit from pre-combustion or post-combustion sequestration. Then you have CO2. But all of them then will need pipelines, you need compressors, you need to put the gas in the ground, so you need pumps, compressors, and all that kind of stuff. And there is no supply chain that, at least in the short term, can provide this machinery. And the same goes for the pipeline, the same goes for the valves, the same goes for everything. So we tend to look at it often from a macroeconomic perspective and saying, tops down, yeah, there's this huge demand, or there should be this huge demand, and there are these many opportunities, these many power plants where we can implement this. But we also have to look at it, what is the industry capable of supplying? And then the next question that always comes up is, the industry will just grow and they'll make the investment. Well, it takes significant investment in industry to get ready for supplying this machinery. And that means there is significant risk involved, right? And for risk, to be able to take these risks, you need some kind of financial assurances. And currently, with all the public-private support that we're seeing, we don't see really long-term commitments. We see 4-year commitments, 6-year commitments or something. But when a manufacturer says we're going to change our compressor technology from natural gas to hydrogen and CO2, that means for the next 30, 40 years, that's not subsidies and guarantees.
Thank you very much. We just lost your audio there for a second, Klaus, but thank you very much. Points well made. Gentlemen, unfortunately, the sands of time have run away, but I do want to get a very brief take on what you hope ADIPEC will bring this year. It's obviously a platform that plays a critical role, and there is a huge decarbonisation conference, one of the 10 conferences taking place at the event this year. Klaus, 30 seconds, your thoughts on how ADIPEC continues to shape the conversation and steer the discussion, not least when it comes to decarbonisation.
I mean, ADIPEC is the world's largest networking event. Everybody goes there. We have to go there because we need to see what our customers do. We need to talk to them. The industry is undergoing massive changes right now. We've discussed that for the last hour or so. And so we need to know what our customers want to do. We need to know what our competitors are doing. We need to know what the operators in the world are doing. So that's the biggest event in the world where we can get together and get all that information in one place. So it's a highly relevant event, not just for operators and end users, but also for manufacturers.
Thank you very much. We're looking forward to seeing you and your team on the ground again this year. What are your hopes for this year's ADIPEC?
I believe ADIPEC is an excellent platform for organizations like PETRONAS to showcase our aspirations and achievements while exploring knowledge transfers and technology scouting. As we introspectively reflect on the importance and impact of these platforms through the years, I believe it has manifested in our achievements. Just for example, in the first half of 2024, PETRONAS has successfully reduced GHG emissions by 5.1% compared to the corresponding first half of last year. This is an accomplishment that is underscored by our ongoing commitment to enhancing operational efficiency and minimizing flaring and venting operations. So I believe we can all agree that platforms such as ADIPEC are where we can unite for energy progress and stand concerted towards achieving global decarbonization. And as PETRONAS is one of the decarbonization sponsors of ADIPEC, it has always been a great event for networking opportunities to enable connections between diverse stakeholders. So all in all, Rebecca, the criticality of these platforms is undeniable. Thank you.
Thank you. Mohammed, you and I will be jumping in our electric cars and whizzing up the road to Abu Dhabi. Tell me your hopes for this year.
So with the energy transition, we're seeing a lot of different kinds of players come into the picture. And I think ADIPEC is becoming more and more important, because in the past, I wouldn't engage with waste management companies. In the past, I wouldn't engage with companies, transportation companies, shipping companies. And this is where when we're talking about restructuring the whole supply chain, we're really talking about restructuring the whole supply chain. And you need places like ADIPEC where you are forced to meet these kinds of industries, to learn about them, so that you can find new ways to do things better. So I'm really looking forward, and always there's good panels in ADIPEC, so please join us. I'll be there.
Thank you very much. Correct. Always finding new ways to do things better, as Mohammed said. What are you hoping to take away from ADIPEC this year?
Yeah, I think if we look at, great ideas are not, created, in a closed room by a single person. They're created by, working with others, by interfacing with others and seeing new ideas, and maybe seeing somebody else's idea and say, hey, if we just made this additional change to it, it's going to be even greater. So forums like ADIPEC, all the knowledge sharing, the ability to see what's going out in the market, understand where clients are going, where society is going, all of these are critical to us getting the best technologies that we can deploy for the future. So I'm very excited about the event.
Thank you so much. Gentlemen, unfortunately, we have been beaten by the clock, but on behalf of everybody watching and listening around the world, a very big thank you for your contribution to our webinar today.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And just before we sign off, to our audience, thank you also for your valued participation. We love hearing from you at Energy Connect and ADIPEC, so please continue to share your thoughts with us, and stay tuned for more webinars in the coming weeks as we count down towards ADIPEC 2024 from the 4th until the 7th of November in Abu Dhabi. And also, not to be missed on the ground, the Decarbonisation Conference, part of this year's agenda, as always, a very inclusive forum dedicated to finding credible solutions that can deliver the energy system of the future while rapidly decarbonizing the energy systems of today. But for now, thank you again. It's time for us to say goodbye. Go to adipec.com and energyconnects.com for more details. We'll see you soon.